Another edition of Riding Home. Ryan Curley, Dean Legge. Ryan wants to talk about the future of the SEC. This is something that's been talked about a lot. I have much to say about this, Ryan. Why don't you get us kicked off? What's your question?
Yeah, it came out today that, or rumors are that the SEC wants to stamp at its 16 teams once Oklahoma and Texas come over. I think that's a good thing. I think the future, the next 5 to 10 years, is so cloudy. We don't know exactly what we're getting. We know what the next couple of years is going to look somewhat normal in college football, but these mega conferences, I don't know if all of the idea of these mega conferences, I don't know if all of those changes are going to be positive in the long run. I mean, it's all about the bread at the end of the day. That's why all this is happening. But I think keeping at least three or four, the Power Five is just kind of going out the window at this point. But I think you
Hmm.
need more than just two giant or it's just the NFL.
And when you say it was being reported today, I'm not sure I saw that immediately. Was that from a reputable source or just TikTok or Twitter?
CBS guy, an SDS guy. It's a couple of people. I don't know if it's confirmed or not. I bet that's going to be one of the first questions on Monday morning, a week from today, for Greg Sankey.
Well, yeah, no doubt about that part. I don't trust. I mean, it depends on who we're talking about here. Here's the problem. Um, okay, let's just slowly go through this because I have talked with a couple of people. I do not talk about who I talk with for obvious reasons. Um, one conversation was rather lengthy. Well, they both were. One was explaining how everybody can say what they want about ACC people leaving the ACC, that it is far more complicated than people think, and that people are just going to say, Ryan, oh well, they'll get the attorneys. I mean, that's not the way it's been explained to me. That's number one. Number two, I spoke with someone who would not have a vote, because it's just the presidents that really at the end of the day vote, but a person that has a very good understanding of the league, and they were very skeptical that that right now the league would be interested in anyone. It's only one person. Um, and I think when you start talking with people behind the scenes that have been around the league, who are who have an understanding of the media situation as far as the contract is concerned with the ACC, or have been around the league, I'll put it again like that. Um, the one other thing that keeps popping up is, oh, let's say you want to, add Miami. Are we sure that Miami is worth the value of $80 million a year? Um, and there's some skepticism about that. And that's just Miami. The other side of the coin here is, and this is extremely nuanced all the way around. The other side of the coin is, if you're the SEC, don't you want to go get who you can get? For instance, if you could get, if you were the SEC tomorrow, Miami, Clemson, Notre Dame, and Florida State, wouldn't you do it? And just for the land grab of it all. And I think the quick answer is yes, but the long-term answer might be no, because whereas Clemson has had a glorious, 7 years, that's not their normal operating procedure. Notre Dame's has had a good run, and they've been a top five, top six television school. Florida State and Miami have not. And this is about television revenue. This is about eyeballs. And as convenient as it is to talk about, Clemson and Florida State coming into the league, my suspicion is Georgia would be very hesitant about that. Florida would definitely be hesitant about that, and South Carolina would be very hesitant about that. Now, that's three schools. I think Tennessee, if they were smart, would be a no on those. And once you start getting to about four no's, then the league is like, are we sure we want to do this? But right now, to me, it's not a fit.
No,
It's not a fit.
at
It's
this
not a
point,
fit in terms
the regional
of paper.
conferences are kind of going out the window. Yeah, but
It happens.
what was the? Do you remember what the vote was for OU and UT?
Unanimous,
Was it? It
because
was unanimous.
the
Yeah.
babies at Texas A&M, got in line. This is a business.
Mhm.
And whereas OU and Texas coming in not just solidified the league at 16, it also brought well, there were a couple things in talking with similar people. The SEC viewed Texas and Oklahoma, Ryan, as a real threat to leave and go to the ACC or the Big Ten. And then you start talking about an ACC that has Texas, Oklahoma, Clemson, Florida State, Miami. That's a legitimate conference at that stage. Right now, it's hard to call the ACC a legitimate football league. There are some teams that need to do their part. Clemson can't drag the whole conference for a decade. Florida State knows what that's like, and it falls apart after a while. So the SEC viewed OU and Texas as making a lot of sense. They did not want them to go to the Big Ten. They did not want them to go to the ACC. So they went to 16 teams. Everything fits with 16 teams, man. You can do an 8-1 schedule. You can do, there's a lot of stuff you can do. Once you get to 20, once you get to 18, is very precarious to do things. And again, at the end of the day, do two more schools fit into this thing? Like if Notre Dame and North Carolina said tomorrow, we don't care, we want to leave the ACC and go to the SEC, wouldn't the SEC want to do that? And the answer to me would be yes. But before you talk, pick up DAWGSTRUCTION today. I am running out of books. I cannot stress that enough. I am running out of books. With you get what you purchase what is on the screen right now. You get the other one that now is on the screen by itself that has some articles from Ryan Curley in here. I cannot remember what you wrote about, Ryan. I'm not going to lie. What did you write
Jalen
about?
Carter. I wrote
Ah,
Jalen
yes.
Carter.
You discussed the Jalen Carter, and look at that image. That's the
Some of those
best.
pictures are different than the ones in DAWGSTRUCTION.
Well, totally. I didn't use the same. I used one image that was the same. That's it. Um, but
More
you know,
exclusive stuff.
you get you get DAWGSTRUCTION. You get this for free. The link is down below. If you just want if you just want the 2022 preview, the link is down below there. Go ahead and grab it. If you haven't gotten it, if you're in Athens, you can run by Red Zone. I do not know how many Red Zone has. I know they're running low on DAWGSTRUCTION. I'm telling you right now, get DAWGSTRUCTION now. While before I got to order it, we have media days next week. That will sidetrack me for half a week. Get them now. You were saying, Ryan.
I think things when you get closer to 20 become so much more complicated. When you just look past the money part, which is at the end of the day what all of this kind of boils down to, but talk about the actual competition on the field, the scheduling becomes difficult. And then it becomes, well, are we really picking two out of 20 teams to go to a conference championship? Do you have a little conference playoff before a national postseason? And I mean, what if there's one 20 team conference and the rest of these conferences are not fun? They're just smaller conferences. The whole national landscape becomes a lot more complicated.
See, this is why Greg Sankey was so pissed that they didn't do the 12-team playoff because he knew that with the SEC expanding, that means more losses in the league. It also is a path forward to where the SEC could grow and it not be a big deal. Right now, we don't even know if there's going to be a college football playoff in 2026. Now, there will be some sort of playoff, whether it's just the Big Ten and the SEC. That could take place at the it's just very simple, man. They already have relationships with three bowls. You have a game at the Rose Bowl, you have a game at the Sugar Bowl, the national championship is in the Orange Bowl, or you rotate these things. The ACC, they got a relationship with the Orange Bowl, okay, but you think they get? I mean, it's just not the same. So, we can go to a conference champion, the runner-up, and then it's just like GHSA, Georgia High School football or Georgia High School basketball, whatever. The region champions and the runner-up go advance to the playoffs. You just do a crossover, and this past year it would have been Georgia again. Who did Michigan beat? Iowa. So it'd have been
Mm-hmm.
no, it'd have been Georgia against Michigan and Alabama against Iowa, and you probably would have still had the same national championship. It just would have been, I guess, at the Orange Bowl or the Sugar Bowl, one of the two. But my point is, I don't. This ACC contract is a real problem, and if people think that Disney is going to say to North Carolina, "Oh yeah, you can just go to the Big Ten, no big deal," No shot. Not happening. Now, if they were trying to go to the SEC, maybe they make that work. But then Boston College and whoever's left behind is going to have a huge lawsuit waiting on their
Yeah.
hands. It's
Yeah.
just what it is.
Yeah. Because what does it really mean for say those four ACC schools did end up coming to the what does it mean for the ACC?
It's
You just
dead.
lost four of your. It's dead. Like what's happening with the Pac-12, the Big 12. I think is kind of a joke now, but it, college football as a whole is just in a completely different direction than what it was before. We're gonna get a bigger playoff in the next 8 years, probably sooner. It's not going to be a 14 playoff anymore. I was fine with the way it was. And I wasn't even I didn't even really have that many problems with the BCS, but we're going to get a bigger playoff. My biggest
I did.
concern is what the BCS was your problem
Yeah,
or
I mean, the best team didn't always win. And I mean, I think
yeah,
we saw in 2012 where Georgia was penalized for being in the same conference as Alabama.
yeah, yeah,
2007, we saw where one of the hottest teams in the country, Georgia, was not allowed to play for the national championship. In 2002, they did not play for the national championship. And that's just from the Georgia perspective. So, I mean, Miami playing Nebraska for the national championship, total joke. I mean, they got beat 60 something to 30 by Colorado. I mean, it's just it made no sense. At least with more, you get a more equitable. People get the chance to prove. Now, should we have a 64 team playoff? No.
it's not basketball.
And
It's not basketball.
well, it's not the same sport, right? You can't play 2 days
Yeah.
later, but or a day later in basketball in many cases. So what I would say is the leagues the ACC and the Big 12 are going to have to have some sort of agreement um, to where they combine. Everybody talks about, oh well, if the ACC goes away, bitch, the Big 12 has been dying for since it started, and it's still around, and it's not going anywhere. So the notion that the Big 12 that the ACC is going to die, it's not. It's going to change. Some people think in the boardrooms, some people think there will be three leagues. I don't know about that. I mean, it seems to me like there will be two, but it may take 50 years to get to two. I don't know.
Exactly. Exactly. We don't know that there's no timeline on this. And
No.
if it moves to, I think it's going in the direction of two. I don't think three makes as much sense. But what does it mean for a playoff and trying to win a national championship if you have a giant Big Ten, a giant SEC, it's not all regulated, and then there's just a bunch of schools on the outside, whether that be the Big 12? It gets
Well,
confusing.
the Mountain West is on the outside. The AAC is on the
Yeah.
outside. I
Yeah.
mean, and Cincinnati's gotten able to play. I think the key to college football and the long term viability of the ACC, the Big 12, and now the Pac-10 is a 12 team playoff. I mean, if you don't have that, if you have a 12-team
Yeah.
playoff, Notre Dame's not going to go anywhere. If you have a 12-team playoff, the ACC doesn't really have to change. The ACC has a systemic problem because of a contract, and there's really no great way to get them into a better position. But I mean, adding Notre Dame, I mean, Notre Dame's a school, and it just Auburn is a more valuable property to television than Clemson. That is a truth because they have more viewers in regular season play. So that sounds backwards. Well, it doesn't sound that backwards. I mean, Auburn is a pretty good brand, but to say that the fifth best or sixth best SEC program is better than the top ACC program, that is really saying something, and it's probably better than everybody in the Big Ten except definitely Ohio State and Michigan, maybe Michigan State or Penn State. I mean, Auburn is way up there. Auburn has
Yeah.
what Auburn has going for them, Ryan, is they play Alabama and they play Georgia. Those are the two biggest draws in the league, and those are two huge rivalry games. And those are the reasons why Disney is paying all this money. My hot take on all of this is I do not think we're going to see Texas and Oklahoma in the SEC until their obligations have been fulfilled in the Big 12 because it's not worth the money. It's not worth throwing away 80 or 100 million or whatever, you know. They definitely, I think, will not be there in 23. I am
I don't think so.
That would be next football year. I am skeptical beyond belief that they will be there in 24 because, I think at the end of the day, the people that are running these institutions, they have a fiduciary responsibility to do the right thing. And throwing away $80 million or $50 million or $25 million just so you can play in the SEC, I just don't know that that makes a lot of sense, man. And, Oklahoma apparently is in a little bit more trouble, if you want to even call it that, has more challenges in terms of finance than Texas does. But still, would you just take $5,000 and throw it into the trash can so you could get another trash can?
No,
I know I
no,
would.
because you can't. It's I agree with the presidents of these universities need to make that decision because you're still earning all this money while being in the Big 12,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
It's just people are
Yes.
impatient. People are impatient.
Well, that for all the talk and the chest beating and the, whatever you want to call it, no one's left early. I mean, Cincinnati's not leaving the
Not yet.
AAC early. The Big 12 is still intact. I mean,
I think some people assume that
I'm
the
I may
move
have
was going to be next year, though, right? Because of the CBS deal
because
ending for
people don't know
yeah.
what they're people just simply don't know what they're talking about, or they get so excited and they get their thumbs on thinking that they are smart with the Twitter game. The truth is that 23 is I would say more and more unlikely as we go on. 24, I know Disney would love to make it right. The scenario where it could happen where they leave early is there's a renegotiation of the Disney deal. I'd be remiss if not mentioning here, I'm kind of burying the lead. You know, if the Big Ten goes about getting $100 million deal per school for media rights, not for distribution from the conference. $100 million media deal again, not distribution. Then the SEC made a huge mistake a couple of years ago, not waiting to go to market, well, they have made a huge mistake in not bundling all of their rights at the same time and going to market every 6 years because that's what the Big Ten has done, and it's really elevated their move. I don't think the Big Ten is going to have 100 million in distribution per school for media rights. That is a 1.6 billion dollar television contract. That is really hard to recoup money from. I mean, Monday Night Football is somewhere in that ballpark, and that's not a great deal for ESPN, but they do it. Um, and there's complaining there, and that's the NFL. So 1.6 billion, kind of I will believe it when I see it. If you're saying 100 million in distribution from the Big Ten, that's bowl games, college football playoff, NCAA tournament, all of the minutia, that could happen. But 100 million in television rights, that would be way overpaying because, if the SEC is getting however many, you and I know what CPM means, cost per million, or how many dollars per thousand video ads. We know what that is. Well, television's the same game. It's just millions. And so they would be overpaying in a huge way for a 6 year period of time. And NBC may say, we have to do it. CBS may say, we have to do it. But Fox is the one who is in major control here, and they don't have the money they once did because they've sold a lot of their properties to Disney. But anyway, News Corporation is not hurting, but they would be overpaying in a tremendous way, and they already have leverage of the NFL. They have a lot of stuff. They don't need things. So I'm skeptical they're going to overpay. I think some of this is talk. I think some of it is a confusion about what is media rights and what is distribution. Those are not necessarily the same thing. That's like saying all whiskey is bourbon, which is not true, right? Ryan being an expert at these things. But I'll
Yeah.
stop talking now because I feel like I'm getting into the weeds. But my point is, if the Big Ten is distributing $100 million for television rights to Nebraska, to Northwestern and Rutgers, and Georgia is getting a distribution of 50 something million or $60 million, there's a problem there for a media deal. That would be a real issue. And if the Big Ten wanted to talk to Georgia in that scenario, I think you take the phone call. Georgia does not have to stay in the SEC. There is nothing binding them to the SEC. There is no contract.
What do you think the odds are that all of these conference shifts that have been proposed and agreed upon in the last year or so all happens in the same off season? Do we get one clean off season and then just a
No,
big change? It's going to be
it's a
constant
mess.
change. It's a disaster.
Yeah, I mean, for the good
This is a
news,
disaster.
brought to you by Americans have always, since our founding, fought about the power of Washington and the states. Well, here we are in college football fighting
Yeah.
about the power of the conferences and the schools, or the overall being. If you want the power to be local, it's going to be messy. And right now we're seeing a very messy process. And what's going on in the Big Ten is they've been able to wrap everything up into a clean bow, and they can say to Fox, who will get at least half the contract, as well as their other friends, whether it's Disney, CBS, or NBC or Apple, and they will say, "This is everything all at once. Here's USC. They can play Michigan week 1, and they can play Ohio State week 5. Congratulations." That will happen in the Big Ten. That will not happen in the other leagues because it's going to be a little bit messy. And everyone thinks, oh, ESPN can do whatever they want to do. Not really. I mean, if they could do whatever they wanted to do, they'd have a 12-game playoff right now, and that has not happened. So, um, Fox coming into this ball game and pushing its weight around, Fox could be the next provider of the college football playoff. They don't have to do anything. There are no rules. This is the wild, wild west, and the only rules are you do kind of have to follow the contracts, and the penalty is, for the ACC very specifically, is tremendous. And I think people are not getting that part. Doesn't matter how many times I say it. Everyone comes back with the lawyer stuff. This is a pretty ironclad deal, and that's just to leave. You also have to have a landing spot, and it doesn't. I mean, my background chatter is there's not a landing spot right now. I know we're going long here. I'll say this: do you really think that Clemson, that Georgia, and South Carolina are going to say, "Oh yeah, come on down. You're an hour and a half from both of our campuses." Tennessee will be like, yeah, 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 yeah. We are about to have a massive advantage over you for the next decade. But no, we'll let you off the hook. Yeah, come on down. We want to play you every. No, no. They'll die on the vine. And the other thing is, all of these ACC ADs and presidents know it, and the president and the AD at the ACC, excuse me, the commissioner of the ACC may not have realized this a year ago when he made a huge mistake, but he realizes it now, and he's going to have to figure out how to make this work. Now, there could be some criticism for Greg Sankey coming too. We're just going to see what happens with this Big Ten deal. There's a lot of bullshit out there right now. Okay, we don't really know what the SEC deal is. So it could be $350 million or $370 million. Well, that's a little different, than 300. And that's just for the tier one, the number one game every Saturday. There's another
Yeah.
$150 million in this deal. So this reporting is, I am a bit skeptical of the reporting, generally speaking. Um, but it may be that we have hit a supply and demand situation where there is way too much demand for college football games and sports right now, Ryan. And so it's driving the cost up dramatically because CBS no longer has college football. And the Pac 12 suddenly is the Pac 10 and has no real value. The Big 12 has no real value. So, in terms of CBS, so NBC, CBS are in a touch of a panic, and they're trying to make sure that they're okay. I think Notre Dame's going to stay at NBC for a long time. It seems that way. But CBS probably liked their situation with the SEC, to which I would say, well, then you should have paid more money and kept the package.
Yeah.
But
I don't think we're
400,
going to get that many answers next week.
$400 million may have been too many dollars for CBS. And they might, I mean, I get that. That's a lot.
Over time, though, you don't think that'd pay off for them?
Well, there's been a little bit of annoyance with the fact that CBS would not renegotiate what was a hugely one-sided deal for 50 something million dollars a season for the SEC. And when Disney came to the table um, and offered a tremendous amount of money, I think there was some thought from CBS. Now, this is speculation on my part, that the SEC would stick with CBS because they had been a good partner for such a long time. I had someone tell me that who would have some understanding of this whole process. That turned out not to be true. So, what matters right now in our league and in this sport, our sport, is that it's put up or shut up time. And another concern, I'll stop talking, is I had someone say to me who is in administration at an NCAA school, I'll put it like that, who said that there is concern, not concern, they just said, how are these schools going to really get $1.6 billion and act like they don't have employees? So there's some worry there on the Big Ten side of things that you're getting $1.6 billion of revenue and you have people doing the job and you're not paying them. And there's going to be lawsuits there too. So this is a long time coming. It's messy, but I think for the SEC, it does seem like it's going to stand pat for now because of all of the nuanced things I said. Mainly, I would say because of two things. Is there really value there with if you were to grab North Carolina, let's just say Duke, Clemson, Florida State, Miami, and North Carolina. Is there really value for those four schools to come in? That would be another, 170-ish million dollars. Are those four schools worth it? I don't know. And then secondly, perhaps more importantly, they would have to pay just to get out of the ACC deal something like 130 to 150 million dollars just to get out. I just don't. And then there's concern, Ryan, that they would not be permitted to play their games on television. That's how bad this
I don't.
ACC deal is.
I think they should hold. I think they should hold the 16. I think there's a certain point when you got to look beyond the money, and think about the actual product.
Answer me this: of the four teams I've been talking about, Notre Dame would be a bigger brand.
Yeah,
But
for sure.
of the teams I just mentioned, Miami, Florida State, Clemson, and North Carolina, which of those is a bigger brand, over time than Texas? Miami?
Miami. I mean, North Carolina. You got the basketball with North Carolina.
No, North Carolina is being left out here. Florida State is a big brand that has been in real trouble this century. I mean, they've won a national championship too, but it's been a rough go. So, is Florida State
I
what it
think
used to be?
Miami's a bigger brand than Clemson. They just are.
Oh, there's no question
I
about
mean,
that.
it's so.
There's
I
no
mean,
doubt.
I would take a Miami over it.
Larger metropolitan area. There's a lot of things.
There's a
Miami,
lot of things that matter.
yeah.
I would take a
My
Miami over a Clemson. You know what, dude? We're almost at 30 minutes. But so the last thing I'm going to say is a joke about Clemson that I saw on the internet the other day. That was funny. It's just Auburn with the lake. So I'm taking Miami over Auburn with the lake 10 out of 10 times.
This is so funny. This is the difference between a 20-year-old who went to Georgia and a 40-year-old. That's been around for a while. That one's
well,
been
I
around
just
for a
saw it.
while.
I just saw it.
Okay, welcome.
And
welcome.
I think it's accurate. And I'm not going to bash physical cities too much on here, but people know my opinion on those two cities.
Clemson and Auburn are not cities; they are towns.
Small towns.
Yeah, well, Clemson's a small town
Listen,
for
man,
sure.
this is entering the Auburn city limits is a nightmare for me. So it's one of my nightmares.
Well, hey, pick up Dark Instruction. You get the preview for free. We'll see y'all at Media Days if we don't see you before then.